we, including Lynn Boyer, have walked every single business from 25th Street to 9 Mile Road to see what is there. That incidentally ties into to item E on your agenda, the CARE program. A word about number D before I run out of time here, which is new and completely unusual. We would like to ask you to work with the Commonwealth of Virginia, if necessary, see if we can get a law passed that says alcoholic beverages have to go in clear plastic bags, and anybody that hands out a brown paper bag along with that clear plastic bag is violating the law, so that we don't have the loitering on the streets in brown paper bags with beer in them where the police can't do anything about it. We'd also like to have the laws changed that allow for loitering, which we can't do anything about under existing laws, as you well know. It's in here. I ask you to take time to read it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Morris.
Wilmer Ricks.
Mr. Vice Mayor, Mr. Bob, City Council, my name is Wilmer Ricks, and I am the president of Ricks Enterprises. I'm a Class A general contractor. I'm also the first recipient of the bank loan participation program created by the city. I would like to thank Mr. Robert Bob, Mr. Joe James, Larry Haynes, who I had first contact with concerning the program, and also Mrs. Joyce Wilson. The loan program has helped me create jobs in my company. Also, we've been able to provide quality housing for low to moderate income families. One of the main things that this loan did for my company was I was able to hire a young man by the name of Michael Hobson from Norfolk State as my project manager. He's on board with the company now, and I'm very excited about that. We're engaged in a project in Fulton Court now. I would also like to say after receiving this loan and hiring people, I'm finding that we need some type of job training program for prospective workers. At this time we need roofers, and they're very hard to find. We need carpenters, and they are really hard to find. Those that are I guess, really good carpenters are working, but if we could have some type of training program to develop young men into tradesmen, I think it would really help the city and also help businessmen like myself who are in the market to hire people. I'd just like to thank the city again for creating this loan program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ricks.
James Thorson is next. Following Mr. Thorson is Reva Trommel, Thomas Enns, Anna Furness, and Peter Conti.
I'm not Kim Thorson. I'm Virginia Ritchie. Mr. Thorson had to leave this evening. Mr. Thorson is president of Downtown Richmond, Inc. I serve as the corporate secretary of that organization and will present very brief remarks on his behalf. Downtown Richmond, Inc. is the nonprofit corporation organized to manage the programs and services of downtown special service districts. Through DRI, there is the opportunity for active partnership between city government and a broadly based group of businesses within downtown. DRI is organized to support and promote downtown and to join with you in assuring that we have the economic and physical environment which is needed for business growth. Through DRI, the business community has come to the table with resources and commitment for the support of the organization and its work. To reach the success our community can and must achieve, and to continue business growth and retention in the downtown community, we must assure a clean, safe, and secure environment friendly to business and to customers alike. To that end, we have recently initiated a business development strategic planning process supported by significant and much-needed market research. That research will be completed in the very near future, and we look forward to working with you to accomplish a planning process that is supportive of your plans and your hopes and your visions for Richmond's downtown. You will find in the packet that was distributed to you by Mr. Myers a description of the goals of that process and of the accomplishments that we hope to achieve. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening and look forward to working with you on these important projects for Richmond's downtown. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Richmond.
Reva Trommel.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Reva Trammell. I live in the city. We have come here tonight to ask the question, how do we attract business from around the country and the world to move into our city? But this raises other questions such as, can we shed the reputation of being a murder capital? What can be done to make the city a more attractive place to do business, to work, and to live? The number one problem of the city is crime. There is a direct connection between the fear of crime and the economy. Why bring your business to a place where the business can be broken into or vandalized, where the business owner and their employees can be victims of crime? We must make real and positive changes in the communities that endure crime. People talk about how hard the police and the courts are in the counties, but if we are to take notice, many of the businesses that were once in the city are now relocated in the counties. Is there a connection? Perhaps the real crime figures are not as high as the real fear. Fear is what's killing the city. If we act now as a community, along with the police and the city council, we can revive our city, not just to its former greatness, but to new heights and freedom and opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trammell.
Thomas Enns. Thomas Ennis. Excuse me, Mr. Ennis.
Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council, Mr. Bob. My name is Tom Ennis, and as a speaker mentioned earlier, I'm a realtor in the city of Richmond. I come to you tonight as a principal and an agent for Lady Luck Richmond Incorporated, which is the local corporate affiliate of Lady Luck Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, Nevada, a company with over 30 years in gaming experience and a leading operator of riverboat casinos. I'm not here to discuss the pros and cons of riverboat gaming, but merely the business merits. You have before you an outline of what I'm going to speak about, a copy of an article by Gerald Jones of Norfolk, member of the House of Delegates and principal patron of the Saint in the General Assembly. You also have some miscellaneous architectural renderings based on interviews with Joe James, Frank Jewell, and Mark Hirth. I'd like to refer to Mr. Jones' article and use the numbers of Dr. Cook, an economist at the University of Richmond. We have our own numbers, but since I have a degree in economics from University of Richmond, I would like to push that school. If you look through there briefly, they say with 7 boats there would be 7,000 jobs, which would be about 1,000 jobs per location. Use a conservative factor, 50%, that's 500 jobs. They say there'll be 17,000 indirect jobs, which is about 2,400 per location. Again, using a conservative factor, that's about 1,200 jobs. An operation, a riverboat gaming operation, could potentially create about 1,700 new jobs. If you look at tax revenue, his estimate is statewide $123 million, $42 million to localities. With 7 locations, that's about $6 million annually. The impact on business community for suppliers of goods, initially for construction facilities and then ongoing for suppliers of food and beverages, suppliers of uniforms, supplies and equipment, janitorial maintenance contracts, warehousing and transportation needs, etc. As a catalyst for redevelopment, Dr. Cook estimates $200 to $225 million, which is about $30 million per location, with a disclaimer that about one-half of that would go into the boat. If you look through the renderings we presented to you, our guesstimate on that was some $60 million. Minimal, if any, municipal concessions for capital improvements. Riverboat Gaming is a pay-as-you-go customer. Other locations have actually obtained unrelated capital improvements such as schools and bridges. It's an integral part of comprehensive plan for riverfront development for Richmond. A tourist attraction is part of something for everyone in the family. I believe it was USA Today that said the #1 family destination for vacations is not Orlando, Florida, it is Las Vegas, Nevada. While Dad and the kids go to the Valentine and ride in one of Frank's rafts, Mom and Grandma may just go to the casino. The convention business amenity, as business and trade groups plan for the future, we will not be as competitive unless we have riverboat gaming. Part of an overall plan for riverboat facilities on the riverfront. You've heard from the major players already. As Richmond plans for the future, we need to incorporate it now as part of a tourist and entertainment complex to obtain maximum leverage and economies of scale. There is an active role for the City of Richmond. Unlike other sites such as Tidewater, the city already owns the ideal location, and it needs to own the facility and lease to the best operator. Number 2, actively support legislation that will make riverboat gaming a reality. The existing proposed legislation grandfathers certain dinner cruise ships. This restricts the city's options to secure the best operator and essentially ties the city's hands. I heard the complaint earlier that the city doesn't provide a level playing field, and this is indeed the case. Develop a request for proposal that puts potential operators... Am I over, John?
Apparently.
2-minute summary. Get behind legislation and take an active role in promoting economic benefits. Incorporate realistic gaming revenues into unbiased economic analysis. Get involved in legislation to remove grandfather clause so the city can maximize its position for best operation. Decide on requirements and characteristics of long-term partner. Look at zoning and related issues and develop a comprehensive parking and transportation analysis for the entire riverfront. Integrate a gaming facility into overall riverfront and canal plan. Maintain flexibility and options in the best interest of the city and her citizens. As this issue comes to the forefront, Richmond will have many suitors, and she needs to be informed, prepared, and ready to act. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ennis.
Anna Furnace. Following Ms. Furnace will be Peter Conti, Reginald Malone, Randy O'Neill, and Christian Ray.
My name is Ann Furnace. I'd like to thank you, members of council, Vice Mayor, Mr. Bob, for letting me speak. Richmond, as you all know, needs a thriving economy to survive. To attract businesses and tax-paying residents, the city needs to maximize its strengths and minimize its weakness. Without a doubt, one of Richmond's greatest assets is its beauty. Visitors and residents alike delight in its shaded, tree-lined streets, its architecture, the rushing river, parks, and uplifting open spaces. A healthy natural environment also bestows an economic benefit. According to a study done in 1993 by the Bank of America, there is an interesting and telling relationship between economic growth and environmental concerns. The study found that states with relatively few environmental safeguards had economic growth rates of only 2.1%, while states that had more rigorous environmental protection programs had significantly higher growth rates. The bottom line is that economic growth and environmental protection are mutually beneficial and interdependent. Of course, open space and natural beauty are not merely economic assets. They are vital to our happiness and well-being. I'd like to commend the City Council for its wisdom in demonstrating the importance of the city's natural assets through the formation of 3 new citizens groups: the Shade Tree Commission, the Recreation and Parks Foundation, and the Bryant Park Steering Committee. These groups are trying to enhance our natural resources and to ensure that they will be available for everyone's use today and will remain available in the future. The Friends of Bryant Park have been involved with the Bryant Park Steering Committee since it began. Our members are active on all its subcommittees. In cooperation of the Department of Parks and Recreation, we have donated hundreds of man-hours during spring and summer cleanups of the park. And we, too, are exploring alternative sources of funding for city parks, such as corporate sponsorship, foundation grants, and adopt the spot programs for maintenance. While we are committed to assuring that Bryant Park remains a park, we acknowledge the economic challenge the city faces in trying to maintain its public lands. With this in mind, I would like to point out that the plan to raise funds by converting Bryant Park into a golf course, in addition to being unwise from an environmental standpoint, may prove to be ill-advised from an economic one as well. The city of Indianapolis converted one of its parks into an 18-hole golf course. When Eagle Creek Park was formed, it was expected to become financially self-sufficient by 1980. The park has been as high as 80% self-sufficient, but is now averaging around 60%. The Friends of Bryant Park urge you in your pursuit of economic development to remember the crucial importance of our parks and open spaces to the health, vitality, and economic strength of our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Funes.
Peter Conti.
Good evening. My name is Peter Conti, and I own Digits Compact Disc Stores. I have one in Henrico County, one in Chesterfield County, and one in the city of Richmond. I am also an officer of the Richmond Jazz Festival, a festival that will be held this year at the downtown Marriott Hotel, and one that was brought to the city at my insistence 2 years ago. Times have changed. The last time I spoke before the City Council, almost 5 years ago, I was here fighting for the right to have a small 2x3 neon sign in my Chaco slip store window. Now, within the last year, the Valentine Museum celebrates neon with an exhibition on the history of neon in the city of Richmond. Nonetheless, neon or not, my Chaco slip store was a failure. For 3 years, I sat on many committees trying to figure out how I could help. The DRA, the SSA, the Chaco Slip Budget Committee, committee after committee, but to no avail. For me, Chaco Slip failed because of many reasons. No nearby housing, poor people-friendly streets and buildings, perceived and real crime problems, poor parking, and continuous disruption of traffic patterns. But I don't doubt my business concept, and while Chaco was slipping away, my 2 suburban stores continued to gain business at a tremendous annual rate. Everywhere I turned, searching for support and answers within the city's public and private sectors, everyone whined, "We can't do this. You can't do that. If we do it for you, we'll have to do it for everyone." Well, I don't care about the historic ambiance when it stifles the growth of small businesses and housing. When all we have is our little fragile glass artifacts and museums that look great in a brochure but do nothing for enhancing the ability of day-to-day livability for the people of all social and economic status. While in Chaco, every city banker I spoke with expressed their doubts of supporting downtown business. So I too fled downtown, but I didn't abandon the city. I reopened in an area that had impressed me for their ability to run the most cohesive and exciting retail area in Richmond, free of all the downtown institutes, committees, study groups, and constraints that crippled downtown. The area I found was Carytown. Take a look at what makes it work. Affordable housing, a mixture of economic and social classes, small and large businesses, interesting, pedestrian accessible streets, and a sense of community. An area that has taken control of its destiny. Fierce and independent of the crap that has crippled the other areas. It has been 2 years now since I moved my city store to Carytown, and during that time, I found 2 supporters of what I was doing. Larry Haynes at the Office of Economic Development and Rusty Lindemeyer of Crest Star Bank. With the aid of the city-backed loan program, I have been able to build a store in Richmond that has since doubled its business on an annual basis, has become the top store in my chain, and most important, doubled the amount of jobs available. The City-Backed Loan Program is to be applauded for its support of community business owners. It is radical for Richmond. It was action, and the word needs to be spread about its availability, and all the city banks need to put their support behind it. This program was the first time I saw action, not lip service, and I've told other small business owners, come to Carytown, come talk to Larry Haynes, come talk to Crestar, come see Richmond. I hope the city will focus on what is important. Pay attention to your small constituents. Build a foundation through the support of small businesses and the neighborhoods. Pay attention to what they need. If you do that first, the big businesses you want, the large tourism that you crave, and the revitalization of the city will follow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Conti.
Reginald Malone. Randy McNeil. O'Neill. Excuse me, Mr. O'Neill.
Good evening, Randy O'Neill. I'd like to share a little experience. Well, it's big to me, and what the city could do for me to help me buy old, dilapidated buildings and fix them up. That's what my business is. The city could assist me in making my business a success by doing a few of these things. Most of the work I do requires me to work with to have a relationship with community development. Number one, the city needs to become more user-friendly. I need to hear comments like, how may I assist you, Mr. O'Neill, rather than, this is what we're going to let you do, okay? And these are comments I've heard from commissioners of your departments. There has to be a relationship with a tone of joint venture, not feudal building restrictions. There must be accountability for both parties. I've recently been convicted of a Class 3 misdemeanor for working on my own house, okay? And I thank community development for that one. We must accept our roles as the joint venture would define them, okay? I know what mine is. I'm a worker. I need to get out there and work. I need to put food on my table, pay the taxes, all that kind of stuff, buy another house, fix it up, and move on, okay? It's the infill. It's not the large projects that make this, that's going to make the housing available. It's the infill. I've risked many hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you continue to discourage my risk, well, good luck. Redefine the services and public obligation of the departments involved in working with citizens and businesses, like legal. When I have a problem with the city not paying attention to its own bylaws, making me follow their rules, but not following their own as they're laid out, and I call the legal department, sir, and I ask for an opinion, a legal opinion. They say, sorry, if you want a legal opinion, you have to bring your attorney and we'll discuss it, okay? I don't wish to do that. I wish to have an interpretation by the city attorney of his own bylaw, all right? Lose the defensive stance, which in my eye causes an abrasive relationship. There's no right or wrong way to really get anything. I mean, there's just a right way, and that's getting the houses done. That's all we wish to do. The zoning and the codes, the building codes for these old homes, they just don't jive with what we have to do. There's a sequence of events that they wish of us, but we can't afford them the information that we need, even for our own safety, and to figure out, you know, what these buildings need and what the community needs. A case in point is your redevelopment of City Hall East. I mean, that cost $350,000 extra. If maybe you had somebody go in there and take a look, you know, really dig, you might have foresaw a lot of those problems. Regard every opportunity as no job too small or a citizen's concern too trivial. Now, Mr. Bob, I appreciate the attention that I've gotten from your office. It's introduced me to everybody. I still haven't really understood a response yet or received one. Allow the citizens due process. You know, when you apply for a building permit and it has to go up to architectural review and they don't like it and they dismiss it, that's not an opportunity for the building department to just throw away your application. There's an appeals process. That has just recently happened to me. They dispensed of it. Well, I just hope that things get better for me anyway. I know I'm trying, and all I wish to do is go to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Onena.
Christian Ray, Joseph Kyle, Reverend Akita Mensah, and James Dunn. Christian Ray.
It's actually Christine Ray.
Christine,
I'm going to correct that. Members of City Council, thank you. My name is Christine C. Ray. I'm president of Westover Hills Neighborhood Association. As a representative of my neighborhood, I feel that it's important to be here tonight to support the Westover Hills Merchants District. Dr. Toller's already been before me and talked about the Westover Hills Merchants Association. The time has come when urban residential communities need to take a serious interest in what happens to their neighboring commercial areas. The simple truth is that the economic condition of a commercial area has a direct impact on the overall appeal of the adjacent residential neighborhoods. Our neighborhood has already been supporting the Westover Hills Merchants District with the contributions of 2 of our residents. They have opened businesses there, which hopefully will instigate a trend to popularize the area. We are also arranging for social and recreational activities to be centered there. Taking into account the Westover Hills Merchants Plan, which is being presented here tonight, we feel that if City Council can see that Westover Hills neighborhood and merchants are genuinely working together to make progress, then you would realize that additional support from city programs could make all the difference for their positive growth. We think the council needs to acknowledge those neighborhood commercial districts which are borderline economically, as well as those which have already deteriorated. Why not spend less tax dollars to improve areas such as ours, giving them the financial impetus to get back on their feet, than spending more tax dollars for longer periods of time only in those areas which will take much longer to recover? We advocate introducing more preventive medicine for the city of Richmond. Why continue to ignore areas such as ours until they also sink to the point of total deterioration, leaving the city to deal with a far more dismal future? Richmond needs to be a city of vital neighborhoods, or it will continue on a downward spiral and end up the biggest loser of all. We're already doing what we can to take responsibility for our situation, so please create programs to increase our chances of success. We now need your help to finally win in this battle to reclaim our urban communities. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ms. Ray.
Joseph Kyle.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Mayor, Mr. Bob, members of council, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joseph Kyle. I'm a member of the board of the East District Initiative. I'm a member of Mac Marshall's Committee on Economic Development of the EDI, and I'm chair of a subcommittee on heritage tourism. And immediately following my presentation, you're going to hear from my colleague and member of the subcommittee, the Reverend Akita Mensah, on the importance of the heritage of our city for all of the residents of the city. And our committee, or our subcommittee, is very interested in that heritage, and we very much desire to support that heritage. But we're equally interested in supporting heritage tourism that goes with it, because we believe that there are economic benefits to be derived in a coordinated effort to bring visitors to our city and to give benefits for all of our residents. And I'd like to make a few specific suggestions as to how the City Council and the City Government might advance that process. First of all, I've just handed you a copy of the newspaper that our subcommittee has produced, The Guide to the Historic East End. It's a tabloid-style newspaper produced by our committee. It appears twice a year. It appears in May and October. And the target audience is threefold. It is First of all, for East End residents themselves, so that they can know more about the community in which they live. And secondly, it's for Richmond residents at large who perhaps have not been in the East End and would like to know more about our interesting neighborhood. And thirdly, it's for visitors from outside the area to encourage them to come and visit the East End. This newspaper has been very well received. It has been supported in part by city funds and by a generous grant from a local bank. The city share has been about $2,500. We hope in the future that the city will continue to fund this worthy effort. My second point. In the east end of the city is located the headquarters of Richmond National Battlefield Park. The headquarters are in Chimborazo Park. Right now, the Battlefield Park is undergoing a self-study which may lead to changes in the existing use of its facility in Chimborazo Park. And our subcommittee recommends that the existing conversations that are going on between the Park Service and the city's Office of Economic Development continue to ensure that the city has an opportunity to have an appropriate impact on that study process. Third, from 1976 to 1981, during the bicentennial, there was a city historian on staff. That position was eliminated after the bicentennial period passed. However, the city's history is an ongoing process, and each generation asks new questions about the past. We believe that an Office of History, working in concert with the Office of Economic Development, might have a significant positive impact on heritage tourism in the city. As historic sites are more broadly perceived to have economic value, there will be more broad-based support for their preservation. My last point, an archaeology program supported by the city and coordinated with other interests would be a cultural and economic and educational benefit to the city. Alexandria has such a program. It utilizes children, senior citizens as volunteers. It works closely with the schools, and its office at Exhibit Area in the Torpedo Factory is a major and very popular tourist attraction. Please consider establishing an archaeological program, perhaps in conjunction with the schools and with the state. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kyle.
Reverend Mensah. Following Reverend Mensah will be James Dunn, Tom Mountjoy, Tony Graziano, Ed Coleman, Bedros Dandazian, and Eugene Anderson.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Conrad, Mr. Bob, Mr. Oaksman, Councilman Chavis, Richardson, Kane, and ladies, council persons, Baskerville and Harvey. I'm Akita Mensah, a member of the subcommittee of the Heritage Tourism Committee and associate pastor of the Fourth Baptist Church. While reading an article in last week's Free Press entitled "Richmond Not Perfect, But," I was confronted with a view of Richmond that I had not considered before. The article was written by Mr. Woody H. Blair, a Richmonder, and Mr. Blair and his family were trying to decide whether to relocate to Cincinnati, Ohio, where he, believing news reports, thought life would be better. However, upon visiting Cincinnati, he found slums and a divisive racial situation. Realizing that the grass is not necessarily greener elsewhere, and after discussing the matter with his wife, Mr. Blair concluded that with all its faults, Richmond is not any longer as starkly divided as Cincinnati, and that there is a promise of diversity in Richmond that we don't find elsewhere. As I read the article, I began to ponder whence cometh this diversity. My mind flashed back to 1775. It was the year that the Second Virginia General Convention was held at Henrico Parish Church, later named St. John's Church. This section of our community, located in the East End, became known as Church Hill, referencing St. John's, the church on the hill. And it was there on Church Hill, in the sanctuary of St. John's Church, that the birth of this nation began. Thus I appeal to you
on council to support the efforts of the Heritage Tourism Committee to bring to the attention of Richmonders and those who travel through Richmond the rich historical treasure troves located in our beloved Church Hill. Not only do we lay claim to the legacy bequeathed us by such notables as Patrick Henry, the prophet of the American Revolution, and George Wythe, its teacher of liberty, but we also claim that the seeds of religious freedom were also planted in the fertile soils of Church Hill. From St. John's Church, the only legal church before the Revolution, sprang many churches such as Trinity Methodist Church. And this atmosphere of religious freedom later spawned the hopes of people of African descent. Thus, in 1859, a group of slaves of African descent organized the oldest black Baptist church in the East End, the Fourth African Baptist Church. This was done in the basement of Lee Street Baptist Church. Thus, it is into this community of ethnic diversity that we invite you Richmonders and those who travel through Richmond to share in a legacy that made for the very foundation of this nation. Still to be found inherent in our residents is a certain political astuteness, as evidenced in our mayor, Leonidas Young II, who lives in Church Hill and in fact just around the corner from the historic St. John's Church. And still to be found in many of Church Hill's worshipers is a fervor for religious expression that many believe is the residue of a spirituality intrinsic to African traditions. Therefore, we invite you Richmonders and those of you who travel through Richmond to come and view the monuments that symbolize the values and traditions that have shaped us, this city council, and the residents of Richmond, as well as the Constitution of the United States. For those of you who yearn to see where the ideas of American freedom were incubated, we invite you to visit the historic St. John's Church. And for those of you who seek to know something about people of African descent and their time-honored spirit of worship, we invite you to visit the historic Fourth Baptist Church.
Mr. Mensah, you're well over your 3 minutes, sir. Both lights are on.
Just a minute. We are indeed proud of our political and religious roots. We have said that we wouldn't tell anybody, but alas, we just couldn't keep it to ourselves. Please help us make our community, Church Hill by name, a place where cultural history remains provocatively educational and heritage tourism economically viable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mensah.
Mr. Dunn.
Good evening. Vice Mayor Conrad, members of council, and City Manager Bob. My name is Jim Dunn, and I'm pleased to appear this evening on behalf of the Metropolitan Richmond Chamber of Commerce and its Richmond Business Council. I commend City Council for holding public hearings on both crime and economic development. In so doing, you have accurately identified the two issues, singularly and collectively, that will have a major influence on the future well-being of this city. My recommendation to you regarding economic development is that you send the message, Richmond is open for business. Let me quickly suggest 4 ways that message can be delivered. Outreach to existing firms. Let your present business base know that you want to help them grow in Richmond. Ask what services can be rendered or roadblocks removed to accommodate them. Joe James and his staff are already working with numerous city-based firms and organizations like the Chamber to increase business outreach and retention efforts. And they're putting forth a yeoman effort to really let businesses know that they care. Sensitivity to business clients. The city's enterprise zone and small business loan programs are but 2 ways you can create growth opportunities for selected companies. Review your permitting processes, business taxes, and existing services as they apply to both existing and potential firms. Benchmark your programs and services against the most successful communities in the country, then take steps to address your shortcomings within the realm of your resources. Much has been said this evening about the new regional partnership. I applaud your commitment to join the new regional public and private partnership for economic development. This 5-year, $12 million initiative will see leading-edge strategy and programming in support of new direct investment, attention to local business needs, and research and business information to assist in marketing the region to its strengths. Improved business sites. Older cities like Richmond have few modern business areas that can effectively compete with suburban communities for business expansion or attraction purposes. I urge you to help cause the development of new industrial and business parks by recycling vacant and underutilized buildings and land in many of your neighborhoods for that purpose. As members of council, you are the drivers. Set bold goals, define and articulate your strategies. Draw on the numerous business and community resources available to assist you and be consistent in your message. But in all that you do, both in word and deed, send a positive message that Richmond is open for business. The Chamber and its members look forward to working with you in pursuit of that objective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn.
Tom Mountjoy.
Good evening. I'm Tom Mountjoy, the general partner of the Annabelle Lee here in Richmond. We're now in our 7th season, and we pay over $100,000 in taxes annually, and right now we have 62 people on our payroll. Tonight, however, I'm here to discuss the riverboat gaming issue because it's the next evolution of the dinner boat business. Riverboat gaming is a popular entertainment venue with the average per person expenditure only about $50. USA Today recently reported that a stop at a casino is now the most popular activity with the motor coach crowd. Maybe if we had riverboats here, we could attract some of the buses that are coming down 95 to stop and stay in Richmond. The proposed Virginia riverboat gaming bill is modeled after the highly successful Illinois legislation, which has been in effect for 3 years. As proposed in the Virginia bill, riverboats are different from the unlimited land-based or dockside casinos. The bill only allows 7 licenses dispersed throughout the eastern part of the state. U.S. Coast Guard certified vessels are required to go on 2 or 3 hour excursions with a boarding fee and reservations required. A referendum vote will be required before riverboats can be in operation. And the rapid deployment provision in the bill, which was referred to earlier as the grandfathering provision, guarantees that Richmond, the city of Richmond, will get a boat. Without that rapid deployment guarantee, Richmond may not get a boat. I've been working hard for 2 years to see that this happens, and I have worked with the city, with Joe James, Mark Hirth, and developed a plan to transform a piece of property that we own, 5-acre piece of property in downtown Richmond, right next to the canal project, which is this, which used to be the tarmac site, which I think you'll all agree is a horrible, ugly eyesore right now, into a design by Wallace Robertson Todd, who are the planners for the canal project, into this. And this includes a replica buildings of what used to exist there back in the 1860s, a sidewheel steamer to replicate what used to ply the James here back in the old days, and of course a large terminal facility. And this is also connected to the city by the canal, which is right here once the canal project is complete, and a railroad spur which goes to the turning basin of the canal, which now goes to that property. Conservatively, and these numbers are admittedly lower than Mr. Ennis's, this project would create 800 to 1,000 year-round jobs on site, at least $20 million in construction of shoreside improvements just at the site alone, not to mention the surrounding sites, $4 to $8 million a year in voluntary tax revenue flowing directly to the city, and the facility would attract tourists from I-95 and I-64 and would support downtown businesses and facilities. I would also offer a non-gaming excursion boat for those groups and individuals who want to have a riverboat experience without gaming. All this would be accomplished with private investment, with Virginia investors, with little or no need for public funds or subsidies. So I respectfully request that this council consider making riverboat gaming a priority on the legislative agenda for 1995, and that you support my proposal to transform the north side of the James River in Richmond into a first-class attraction for tourists and residents alike. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mountjoy.
Tony Graziano.
Greetings to the council from Anthony Graziano. I commend this new council for its immediate attention to economic development. Businesses succeed when there are markets for their goods and services. Without markets, businesses wither and die, as we have seen right down the street. In the pursuit of businesses, however, we hope that this council will remember that markets mean people. If you want to attract businesses, you must attract the people. If there are people living in the city, businesses will follow. You know how to get people to live in Richmond. Enforce reasonable zoning laws and reasonable building codes. Provide the best, the very best, public schools in Central Virginia. Protect us against crime. And not incidental to me, clean the lakes in Forest Hill Park. If you do these things, I suggest that the future agenda of this council will be how to control growth rather than how to get business. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Graziano.
Ed Coleman.
Mr. Vice Mayor, City Manager Mr. Bob, and members of council. My name's Ed Coleman. I'm here to thank the city. It is all too rare these days that one has the opportunity to talk about a job well done. In this case, it is my pleasure to do just that. Mr. Haynes, who represents the city in the Bank Participation Loan Program, could not have been more courteous and helpful. His attention to my firm and the manner in which he helped was, simply put, impressive. I would also like to point out that during the time Mr. Haynes worked with us, not only was he thorough, but he also demonstrated a feel for the nuances of the project, and all the while recognizing the need for economies of effort. Again, it was my pleasure to deal with the city, and in particular to work with Mr. Haynes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman.
Bedros Dandazian.
Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council, city manager, I thought when I was going to come down here I had a lot of original ideas, but it looks like 50 people ahead of me either read my mind or read my notes. I don't know. So I will not bore you with repeating a lot of it. But I do want to say that basically, just get the bureaucrats out of the way. Believe it or not, I challenge you, just go through the process. I challenge you, just go get a business license. If you know, to solve a problem, you have to know what it is to solve it. Just go through the process and see what we have to go through. I do not have a vacant store front in Richmond, Virginia that I can't put a tenant in. The only obstacle is the city of Richmond. Believe it or not, for every tenant I put in Richmond, I must have a dozen people that have applied and been refused. And don't think because they don't open up in Richmond, Virginia, that they're not going in business. They're going out of the city. If a store is built in the 20s as a store, it's a store. It's not a residence. How somebody has come up with these ideas to label these business locations as stores, it's beyond me. Slogans alone are not the solution. If you will help me and help the rest of the people that are in business, if we can work together and actually do the job, we'll solve the problem of Richmond. The bureaucrats, the offices that are involved, it's not their fault. The city employees are following only these ordinances that you pass. I've confronted many of the city council members before, and when I tell them the problem, they say, "Did I pass that? Is that what it really says?" Believe me, Chuck. Believe me. Some of them are not here today. That's probably why they weren't voted in either. So, believe, if you're going to pass an ordinance, follow through on it. Let's see what the consequences are. The other thing that I have a problem with is a two-tier system for businesses in Richmond. If you're a large business, the red carpet is thrown out. Everything is for you. But pity the poor little girl that wants to open up a beauty shop in Richmond, Virginia. It's impossible. I've been in Richmond all my life. I moved from Thompson Street to Broad Street in an office building. It took me 5 months to get my CO. I was told by one of the people downtown, "You better get your CO. You're going to be in big trouble." I said, "Arrest me. What do you want me to do?" 5 months. Henrico County, I get it less than 48 hours. Chesterfield, the same day. All right. Couple things I've got in here. One thing, look at your parking schedule. In my report, in the report here, the parking requirement for Henrico County is identical to the parking requirement for Richmond. That means a little store on Shepherd Street has got to comply with the same requirements as Regency Square or the whole mall. It's impossible. But how do we solve that problem? I've got a suggestion in there. Mr. George Williams and I had been working on it before he left that city. Good man. Sorry he left. About how to create some sort of a public trust, a parking, an idea where the city can get revenue with this power of eminent domain, can help solve the parking problems. We can put businesses in, and the parking won't be the obstacle. Look at it. I didn't really invent that. I looked at the reports and reviews that the city people had in their magazines. I thank you. Both lights. Oh my goodness. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it. Hope we can get something going again.
Thank you, Mr. Van Duzen.
Eugene Anderson.
By the way, these are all work for Van Duzen and Company. Y'all concerned.
Thank you.
Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the City Council, City Manager. My name is Eugene Anderson. I'm a real estate agent with Van Duzen Company. I came down here, I told him I would come down here with him, but I didn't have a prepared speech or anything. But see Ms. Baskerville over there, I know her, I'm in her district. You know, I was just thinking that I noticed that the price on the parking meters have gone down, and that's really in favor. That's a help to the city, because I've heard so many people speak about the economic situations and the crime situation in the city of Richmond. And if they'd have kept on going up on the parking meters down here, the next thing I would look for is the city officials to put up signs and says, "Richmond citizens, don't shop down here. Go to the Henrico County where there's no parking meters." Now, actually, I have seen the situation exists that the zoning is bad also in the city. And also, I'm thinking about if I had a business, the personal property tax is kind of rough too. If I had a business, I opened my business up in the 4800 blocks at West Broad Street. I don't have to pay for all of my, pay taxes on all of my equipment, computers and things like that. I have to pay taxes on them. I'm in the city of Richmond. But if I move up to about the 52 or 5300 block West Broad, I'll be in the county. I don't pay any taxes. So what are we doing? We look like we're running the people, the businesses out of the city. Well, as I said before, I don't have a prepared speech, and I'm going to leave.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Thank you.
Richard Holden. Beth Abernathy.
Hello, my name is Beth Abernathy, and I'm from Powhatan, actually. I came to work with Bedros Bandasian at Bandasian because I wanted to do business brokerage. I've done very little in this city. The reason being is things are so difficult to work here. I still do a lot of work in Chesterfield, but I come to work in Richmond. I just want to say make things easier here so that more agents can come back to the inner city and work. We want to work here. You've got 3,400 agents in the Richmond area. How many actually work the city? A handful. I work for other companies. They said, don't go to Richmond and sell real estate. It's not worth it. There's a whole lot more out here in the county. There's more people concentrated here. We want to come back and work in the city. Just make it easier for us. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Abernathy.
Joseph Carter. Following Mr. Carter is Greg Zaremba, Thomas L. Harlow, Mark Hurth, Bernice Travers, Delano Page, Catherine Lawson, Michael Scott, and Bill McNear.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Mayor, Mr. City Manager, ladies and gentlemen, council people. My name is Joe Carter. I am president of Dynamic Education Concepts. I am an education consultant, a motivational speaker, and a sales trainer. Tonight I want to thank you for the opportunity to come before you to talk about economic development. Because whether we're talking about crime, whether we're talking about economic development, or whether we're talking about business, we're talking in reality about people development. And the greatest resource that this city has is its people. It's not its businesses, it's not its buildings, it's not its construction crews, it's the people themselves. And if we want to bring Richmond forward, then we must do as the slogan for Virginia used to be, Virginia is for learners. We have to develop people, and we have to start with ourselves, not everybody else. I hear person after person say that department head after department head is hard to deal with. Then that means that these department heads either have to be fired or developed, because in their present form, they are not doing what is to the advantage of this city. I carry in my pocket at all times something that's very difficult for you to see, but it's easy for me to remember. It's an Aiken. And it's to remind me of the potential of every individual on this earth. That when I first saw this as a little boy, it was an Aiken to me. I looked at it for 25 or 30 years and it was an Aiken. And all of a sudden, one day I saw that this isn't an Aiken, it's an oak tree. Then I began to understand that it's not just a tree, it's a forest. And if you have any imagination whatsoever, you can see men with tractors carrying those large trees out of the forest into factories, making furniture, making books, making tables. There's no way that you could convince me that God Almighty would put that kind of a potential in an Aiken and not put a whole lot more potential than that, than each one of you and every person in the city of Richmond and every person on the planet Earth. We can't afford to waste one more person. At the crime summit, they're talking about locking them up and throwing away the key. We can't afford to lock up one more person or make one more key. We've got to find alternative methods of educating, motivating, and inspiring people to reach their full potential. A vision for the city of Richmond that I've had for about 5 years
And as a long-term plan for about the next 20 years, I would like to see a shopping center right in the middle of downtown Richmond, where you knock down everything from 3rd and Broad to about 8th and Broad, and from Broad over to Franklin, and put a major mall. That way you catch the people off of 95, off to 64, and from every section of town, they've got to come to that one because it'll be the newest one. Include in it 10 of those cinemas so that people stay downtown late at night. Have some vision, have some imagination, get involved in planning for success rather than planning for mediocrity and for failure. Our schools are educating people for mediocrity, not for greatness any longer. Think in terms of where business really is and where money is really made. In America, there are more than 1 million millionaires. 74% of them made their money in a business of their own. So unless we're educating and motivating people to start their own business, 26% of them are headed in the wrong direction. Only 74% could even possibly make it. If you take into account of the 250 million people in America, half of them work, 125 million workers, 1 million millionaires, that means that 1 out of every 125 people in America who works is a millionaire. Motivate people, inspire people, show them that they can start their own businesses and that they can start it in Richmond. And it doesn't have to be a business with a major overhead. Home-based businesses in America number over 40 million. With a computer and Kinko's, anybody can look like IBM. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Greg Zaremba.
Vice Mayor Conrad, members of council, Manager Bob. My name is Greg Zaremba. I'm president of the Richmond Taxpayers Association, and I wanted to come down and give you our views on economic development. The first thing we suggest is to come up with a definition of economic development. In the past, city council members have considered putting office buildings up downtown as economic development. We like to think that economic development means new, higher-paying jobs for the city. As you can see from the graphic on our cover, it's basically the same thing that's been repeated over and over tonight. We feel that economic development is codependent on the levels of crime, transportation, education, and city government's responsiveness to the needs of business. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the crime and transportation aspect. You've taken the first step, and that's identified or admitted that there's a problem with crime, and your crime summit is addressing that. All we can hope is that you will come up with some substantial programs instead of just symbolic efforts towards it. Transportation is needed, obviously. Not all businesses are developing in the city. We think that as part of the regional cooperation program, transportation ought to be a major consideration when dealing with the counties. That way, if businesses do start up out in the counties, the people will be able to not only apply for the job, but get to work and keep their jobs. Our biggest emphasis is on the education. The city of Richmond does not have a trained workforce. That's one of the biggest detriments the city has when it comes to attracting new businesses. As you've heard people ask tonight, we need to train people. We need some kind of training program. Well, what we like to suggest is establishment of a 4-year accredited technical high school, one which will teach the trades, ones which will not only provide for education to students who are college-bound in areas other than what's available in the current high school, such as drafting, architecture, electronics, but also teach the trades such as plumbing, electrical, machinists, carpenters. You've got a company across the street building a library. They've got a big ad up there advertising help wanted carpenters. And there isn't any place in the city that'll train a carpenter. So what we'd like to see City Council do is work with the city school board and come up with a program for an accredited 4-year technical high school. We would also like to see the vocational center, the vocational technical school which exists now, converted into a training center
for specific applications. For instance, if we get a potential company interested in moving to the city of Richmond, and they have specific needs on particular skills of the workers, they would supply the equipment. Richmond Vocational would supply the teachers and train those number of workers that they need to open their doors with. It's a program that's used in South Carolina very successfully, as well as up in Wisconsin. As far as city government goes, I think you've heard quite a bit tonight of our tax rates. There's a tax chart in there to give you a quick comparison, but being easy to deal with is also a major concern, and being user-friendly. We appreciate the time to present our views, and if you have any questions, we're available later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zermba.
Thomas Harlow. Thomas L. Harlow. Mark Hurth.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Conrad, honorable members of City Council, and City Manager Bob. My name is Mark Hurth, and I'm Executive Director of the Richmond Riverfront Development Corporation, which is a unique nonprofit joint venture between the city and 5 property owners along our downtown riverfront. Established in 1991 at the recommendation of City Council and Richmond Renaissance, we are an economic development partnership dedicated to making our riverfront everything it will be in the way of high-quality private development, increased jobs and tax base, and the development of a singular public commons along the falls of the James. Over the last 2 years, we have, number 1, completed the Riverfront Master Development Plan, a planning framework for developing 35 acres from Shockoe Bottom to the Lee Bridge. Over the next 12 to 15 years, this plan will result in more than $450 million in private construction centered around redevelopment of Richmond's historic canals. Resulting economic benefits will come in the form of $9 million in new tax revenues, 6,000 retained or new jobs, and the development of a key anchor in downtown's ongoing revitalization. Number 2, we have innovatively coupled economic development with environmental protection by coordinating the federally mandated CSO project with canal redevelopment, achieving in a very cost-efficient way major public improvements along the downtown James. And number 3, and a key step, we have finalized the Riverfront Development Agreement after a year of negotiations. The development agreement is a long-term pact unique in Virginia, and through it, all property owners of the city have made binding commitments, including the donation to the project of more than 10 acres of private property, full commitments to stringent design guidelines, city funding in conjunction with the CSO project, and the establishment of a management and marketing entity for our riverfront. City Council has been central in advancing this project through advocating the establishment of the Development Corporation, revising the city's downtown master plan, budgeting for significant canal and riverfront improvements, and finally asserting for the city a very innovative role in economic development by authorizing execution of the Riverfront Development Agreement. Faced with the challenge of pulling 5 property owners together to achieve a project of immense scope, public and private together have successfully completed the planning phase of this project. We are now ready to tackle critical implementation. The first phase of riverfront work is scheduled to break ground in July 1995, with work proceeding through 97 and 98. Much remains to be done, however, and this City Council stands at the threshold of opportunity to bring this project fully to reality. While work is now well underway on design and engineering for the project, we must push to meet our schedule for the construction of nearly a mile of riverfront improvements. In addition, we must also assure fully adequate water flows for the canals are protected as negotiations continue with Henrico County and state and federal authorities regarding river management initiatives. In closing, we strongly applaud and support City Council as it moves forward towards a strategic plan for economic development for our city, and the Development Corporation stands ready to work in whatever way necessary to further this cause. As part of this effort, we look forward to our continued partnership in advancing the Riverfront project so that by next summer, all of us may indeed gather by the river for an historic riverfront groundbreaking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hurth.
Bernice Travers. Bernice Travers. Delano Page.
Mr. Hatch, could you bring that sign over here a little bit? That sign right there. Bring it over here. Over here, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Hatch is going to move the sign that y'all have over there. I'd like for y'all to really take a good look at it. My name is Delano Page, like First Page family of Virginia. I represent the African American Community Group. Some people say they are fake organizations, and I also represent the African American Investment Group. So therefore, I have a business, I have an interest in the community. I have an interest in the investments that will come into the city of Richmond. Both would be very important to me. Some years ago, in 1972, when I opened a restaurant in the Highland Park community, I seen crime develop in that area and businesses begin to move out. We came down to the city council and other officials, and we said that if you let crime close down businesses, people were going to move out. A lot of people on Main Street and other parts of the city didn't listen to what minority people were talking about when we were talking about minority development you have on the sign. A lot of us went out of business. And from 72 to the 80s into the 90s, you constantly see minority businesses going under. Other businesses are affected too. A lot of people are not going to come into the city of Richmond and invest money. We also look at a good educated workforce. Here and here, these are 10 years old, where we beg for the city school administration to upgrade the education of children coming out of the school, and we just well ahead been talking to a dumb mule. Here we talk with the banking industry about making investments in minority communities. And when we call this meeting with the bankers of the city of Richmond about their lending practices and not making loans in minority to minority businesses, we didn't have two people out of all of these smart people that run down here and want jobs and want grants and want to run programs in the communities. We didn't have two of them. And a lot of them run down here today, and they know everything about economic development in the city of Richmond, regional cooperation, and haven't spent no time on the forefront fighting for what is just and right for the communities. Whether it's the African American community, whether it's the Asian community, whether it's the Jewish community, or whether it's the white community. And what I am saying here tonight as a spokesperson, people in the African American community is sick and tired of being mistreated, and they want to participate. And the only way they can participate in this city move forward is we work together. Divided, it will not work. So, ladies and gentlemen of this council, I hope the sign isn't in vain, but it means that we are going to move this city forward. And I will even say this: Richmond is going to go forward whether the city council work with the citizens or not. Richmond will survive and prosper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Page.
Catherine Lawson.
Good evening, Vice Mayor, City Manager, and members of council. My name is Catherine Lawson. I think we need to ask ourselves about consumers and look at your economic plan and consider the issue of families, which are not included on this, families who consume. Where consumers go, businesses follow. And if you've driven out to the counties, you see the developments, and then you see the malls which pop up, and all the services and the health care, which are located in close proximity. So I kind of look at this in reverse order, and I think about our citizens first. The Community Housing Affordability Strategy, which was published in 1992 by the City of Richmond, it's a document available to all citizens and all of you, describes changes in the city's population from 1970 to 1980 to 1990 based on the U.S. Census data. And it describes that in 1970 we had predominantly two-parent head of households with families, to now increasingly young female single-parent head of households, and increasingly elderly in 1990. This change increases the vulnerability factor in our communities and compromises our community economic security. Lower income generating, these citizens pay fewer or no property taxes or residential taxes. Our economic security rests firmly upon safe communities. Thus, it is in our interest to invite working families into this city. I recommend that you first consider reducing the residential tax rate. When young families buy homes, the tax rate often determines the community they choose. A reduction in the residential tax rate will result in a boom in housing in the city, more property taxes paid, and more demand for city, commercial, economic development, because I want to purchase services close to where I live in the city. So I demand if I own a home here. Second, I strongly urge you to listen to the citizens of the neighborhood team process. This is one of the most devalued programs in your administration, and I want y'all to get busy with that program, please. Consider the suggestions of citizens already existing in their plans regarding education, recreation, daycare, health, services to women and elderly, creation of jobs, industry, and let's look at urban agriculture. How exciting. Put these kids to work in urban environments, agriculturally. Neighborhood team process community solutions to reduce violent events will result in more families will stay in the city as they positively impact community development, economic development. Third, productivity evaluation measures are needed now to assure dollars spent in city government are spent efficiently. Surplus monies can be moved into economic community development as city spending is tightened. Last, a personal testimony. Several months ago, about 6 months ago, my husband and I were looking at property in Hanover, and the draw was an economic draw. And then we began talking to people about our age around town, black and white, who are the income generators, and it was an economic issue. To buy a house between $150,000 and $200,000, they could not afford to stay in the city of Richmond. And not to be able to afford to live here culminates into all the other problems that everyone has discussed this evening. That's your purchasing power, that's your community security, is having neighbors involved in buying here. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Lawson.
Michael Scott. Michael Scott. Bill McNear. Bill McNear. Dr. Edlow, Dr. Leonard Edlow.
Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council, Mr. City Manager. My name is Leonard Edlow. I'm the president of Edlow's Professional Pharmacies. Developing an economic development plan for the city of Richmond, it really works as a task that I do not envy. But with a population that's over 50% black, and with national statistics that state that only 1 in 80 black African Americans own business, we have a problem of price disproportion. In fact, we have one of the problems is the root of the crime problem. For when people lack ownership, they feel that there's no way out, and they lack a respect for the property of others. Therefore, my suggestions may seem radical and out in left field, but when you have a problem of this size, business as usual is not the answer. Pouring money into the black community will not solve the problem. We need methods to keep the 8th largest economy in the world in that community a little longer. Council must take a leadership role and encourage blacks to go into business and encourage and support those blacks that are in business. Every time you're called to speak before a black audience, you should do this. Council should urge the school board to encourage some of its 80% plus black students to go into business. For too long, in my opinion, black students have been encouraged to become preachers, teachers, lawyers, doctors, or to go to work for someone else. What's wrong with encouraging them to go into business for themselves? Everyone else does it. As individual members of council, you must encourage the most stable institution in the black community and the only institution of the black community with the ability to access money to start and support black businesses. I'm really appalled at the lack of the black religious leadership here this week. They were here 2 weeks ago. I believe in prayer and I read my scriptures daily, but we must push the black church to bring the kingdom of God right here to Richmond. The black church supporting black businesses would mean a community pride operating with a profit every quarter. And a black church supporting black businesses would mean a Pizza Hut in communities where they never existed before. And I had this here for the mayor. He would be able to get a pizza delivered to Richmond Community Hospital and much more. Council must make sure that no actions of the city damage black businesses that are in existence. For years, my pharmacy was excluded from various health plans because I was small and I was black. And the city participated in some of these plans. If you want your city to live, this must stop. Finally, we must encourage all our citizens to support the businesses in our community. Only then will other businesses come to our community. Why should Walmart or Kmart move into Richmond if we as Richmonders go to their stores in Henrico, Hanover, and Chesterfield? There are no black pharmacies in Howland Park, Barton Heights, or Randolph, and I'm considering expanding to those communities. But Rite Aid, with all the money it has, overlook those communities and are building stores, 1 block from my store on Churchill and 1 from the block on Bainbridge. Why? Because those people have supported me and kept the money in the communities. Corporate America will only come to your community when you build and support our local business people. Economic development will come to our city only when all our citizens feel they can participate in the American dream, and it won't cost you money. It just takes a change of mind. Let's make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Edlow.
Marty Jewell. And following Mr. Jewell will be Kent Ruffin, James E. Ucrop, Sheila Ware, Eric No, and Clarence Kinney, and Mr. Moon.
Good evening, Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council. I'm Marty Jewell, representing the Richmond Crusade for Voters tonight. A couple of years ago, we had a huge explosion in L.A., riotings, burning, looting. The response, rebuild L.A., economic development. Currently, the federal crime bill is winding through Congress while there's a controversy over preventive programs called social programs. Now this council holds 2 forums, one on crime and one on economic development. We commend you for recognizing the correlation between crime and the quality of life that economics can provide. The chaos caused by economic depression experienced by a major segment of society. I will say undyingly that when there is no justice, there is no peace. I commend to you a philosophy of economic planning that is just and inclusive in its vision, inclusive in participation and in risk. An inclusive vision that may or may not be fully integrated, but it must be a vision that is cooperative with mutual respect. A free market ain't free when it's loaded with barriers to full and complete participation. It does violence to the human dignity to try and play by the rules while constantly, institutionally, getting blindsided by hidden and overt barriers. No, this is not about race, though race has played a major part. It is about the economic vitality of Richmond and the region. We know and we stand firmly that what's good for the African American community is good for this city. The Eggleston Corporation Project. Mr. Eggleston's corporation is a developer. He's not going to build that building, he's going to develop that building. Someone has to build it, someone has to supply it, someone has to maintain it, someone has to staff it. Those are jobs that this city cries out for. And of course, we understand, again, that this is not just a race issue. We understand what's going on or what has happened over on the Midlothian Turnpike corridor, in which assessments were raised so high that the cost of business was prohibitive. Fully acknowledging that my community must do some very important and structural things itself, we feel confident that this day marks a beginning with mutual respect in the mission of building a better Richmond. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mr. Jewell.
Mr. Ruffin.
Good evening, Vice Mayor, Member of City Council, City Manager. My name is Kent Ruffin, and I'm a resident of the City of Richmond. Economic development in this city has existed in a distorted climate. Past bias has encouraged the haves to exploit the have-nots socially and economically, use racial prejudice to redress and direct class conflict, claim moral imperatives to justify their actions, and exclude rather than develop innovative solutions beyond their selfish interest. This bias continues to spur current racial hatred, economic, political, and social distrust and inequalities. The symptoms are clearly visible. Urban crime rages throughout the inner city. A lack of job opportunities prevail. An inability to break the poverty cycle persists. Drug use and abuse are destroying hope and hastening moral decay. Technologically illiterate workforce exists, as well as diminishing earning power of the residential population. Demographic changes, such as the aging of one- and two-family housing stock, declining birth rates, high infant mortality, waning two-family incomes, and an increased majority of African Americans. The challenge to African Americans and non-African American leadership is to think through these contradictions, establish long-term economic priorities, create prospects for growth, and manage the city. The 1990 census indicated that the city's future economic fortunes are within the African American community's grasp. But there are questions still awaiting answers. Who's ready to lead us and others to prosperity? Do we understand our role in a representative government? What effects does voting have on affecting change beyond the political arena? Employment, education, housing, healthcare. can the city's African American community engender international trade alliances to participate in the global economy? How we see these questions as challenges, as opportunities, or tragedies is shaped by our perception, predisposition, and mindset. So too are our solutions to them. The significant power and influence of Richmond's African American community should not be overlooked as the strategic plans are being developed for the city. According to recent census data, African American contribute well over $811 million in income to Virginia. We represent 55% of the total population of Richmond and are a sizable proportion of the employment force. I think, in particular, a coordinated plan for restoration and revitalization of neighborhoods, tax incentives based on invested dollars and results to be achieved, innovative financial options, enterprise zones and incubators, and creative partnerships between public, civic, and private entities to implement urban revitalization and regeneration. Also, an establishment of an international trade foundation in Richmond focused primarily on Africa, the Caribbean, South and Central America, and secondary other regions of the world could greatly help this city. Thank you.
Thank you.
James Ucrop.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and members of City Council and City Manager Bob. My name is Jim Ucrop, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to address you. As a lifelong city resident and business person, I'd also like to see our city reach its full economic and social potential. I am optimistic about the future of our city because I believe that you're a council that is not only ready to address our current needs, but you will also provide vision and planning for the future of our city. We're here tonight to discuss economic development. How do we increase the number of jobs in our city? First, I would say to you that private business cannot create jobs and still stay in business. The only organization I know that can create jobs and still stay in business is government. Business does not create jobs. Economic activity creates jobs. Therefore, it is our collective job to create in our city a climate that will produce more economic activity. In recent years, our city has seen a rapid exodus of young married couples who, when their children reach school age, move out to the counties. These are the folks that spend the dollars, which then can in turn create economic activity. These are people, black and white, who like living in the city, but who, in my opinion, move out for two reasons. And I do not feel it's for higher taxes. They move out because they feel the counties are a safer place to raise their families, and because they feel their children will receive a better education. Black and whites have the same values. They both want good schools and safe neighborhoods to raise their children. Our city is rapidly becoming a city of the very young and the very old, singles and empty nesters, and the very wealthy and the very poor. Upwardly mobile young people enjoy city living, and I believe statistics would show that this population has grown in recent years. However, when their kids reach school age, they're off to the counties. In my opinion, our most important task as a city is to create the conditions and climate in our city that will keep our middle-income families in the city. These are the people who will create the economic activity, which in turn will create retail and service-type jobs. Our challenge is to get beyond the political correctness and the racial issues that divide us and attack the crime issue, its root causes, and its root causes. We must work to make our school system one that will be an attraction rather than a deterrent to economic development. Money Magazine just picked Raleigh-Durham as the best place to live in America today. This did not happen by accident. It happened because of the actions of visionary leaders 20 to 30 years ago. Today, the Raleigh-Durham area is benefiting from that vision and the hard work that made their vision a reality. Today, here in Richmond, we must provide the vision and the game plan to make our community a better place to live for ourselves, our children, and our grandchildren. In economic development, our minds immediately think of attracting new businesses and companies to the area. However, in reality, 70 to 80% of the new job creation comes from existing businesses. I see this yellow light is on, so I've left you all with this paper, but there are some suggestions in there that I would hope that you might take a look at, that I think that could perhaps be some ideas that would work for our city. One would be an incubator. Well, first of all, I would like to say that I think it's been suggested to me if we enforce the building codes of all the rental apartments or houses in town, that alone would create a great number of construction jobs. And with that in mind, I would think that perhaps a small incubator or an incubator that would provide emerging small businesses secretarial talent, accounting talent, and some type of a support system for those small businesses, starting businesses that do not have, where the owners can go out and work and also to sell their services. So anyway, there's some ideas in there that I hope that perhaps may be useful to you. And again, I thank you for the good start that you've made.
Thank you, Mr. Ukrow.
Sheila Ware.
Good evening, honorable members of council. I would like to share with you all this evening the Section 3 Technical Assistance Initiative. This has been designed to improve the opportunities for economic self-sufficiency for those in need in our communities. The Section 3 initiative is a move to enforce Section 3 of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1968, which requires job training, contract preferences, and employment preferences to low-income residents of neighborhood and public housing developments where HUD funds are spent. Participants in HUD youth build programs, providing job opportunities, education, leadership development, and training in housing construction and rehabilitation. And 3, other low-income people in the metropolitan area or non-metropolitan area where HUD funds are spent. It is not clear what the extent of Section 3 of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1968 has been effectively pursued in the past. There is currently an effort underway for implementation of Section 3. The Section 3 monitoring project is underway and will work from a concept called the Section 3 Technical Initiative. The concept paper is part of the materials I am delivering to you. Even though neither Richmond nor the Richmond metropolitan area will be among the 30 monitoring sites, I encourage you to utilize the provisions of Section 3 to make a positive economic impact for low-income citizens in Richmond. I hope some of the pending changes to Richmond's Private Industry Council will be to embrace Section 3 in an effort to generate some of the training necessary in order for those qualifying for the preferences to take advantage of these opportunities for help toward economic self-sufficiency. I also hope that in drawing upon the population of Section 3 targets, layman terminology is used to attract the Section 3 population. This is a brief overview of the economic opportunities available through Section 3. Details are in the materials I'm providing to you. The issue is best addressed in this forum because Council has considerable influence over RRHA.
This council also has the authority over the resources by which a Section 3 initiative could be coordinated. Thank you for the opportunity to share some of my concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Weir.
Eric Noth. Eric Noth. Clarence Kinney. Clarence Kinney. August Moon.
Good evening, Vice Mayor Conrad, City Manager Bob, members of council, and Economic Director, Mr. Joe James. My name is August Moon. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. In the future, I will share my time between activism and entertainment executive, because I feel like at this time that the city of Richmond is in good hands with this council, and I don't have to apply myself 24/7 any longer. In the past, I would like to say that I have been in the following business in Richmond, Virginia. I owned 3 nightclubs at one time, a clothing store, a grocery store, a record shop, and restaurants, as well as a record company. I failed on Hull Street because of the lack of some people in the city government at that time, on council and our police council, whatever happened, economic development director, in the past, to understand that I had dreamed to become an entrepreneur. But I haven't lost faith in Richmond. It's a toss of the dice. Sometime I throw a saving, sometime I crap out. I want to still toss the dice. I have plans to build in South Richmond a 24-track recording studio, which will be state-of-the-art, analog, and digital. I would like to call your attention that soul, R&B, music have been good to many cities in the past. Motown in Detroit, Stax in Memphis, Full International, Philly, the Bronx, New York, Go-Go in D.C., and South Central L.A. with many gains. Urban Beat have a building that have 11,500 square feet, and we have bought a lot of Apple Audio studio equipment, the 24-track board, which costs $175,000, and much more outboard gear. I have been in the business since 1957. I am a BMI writer and a music publisher. I have 200 songs to my credit. At present, my music is being played in 21 countries around the world, including South Africa. I have directed and worked with the careers of Patti LaBelle, Jimi Hendrix, of Cedar Richard Band, the whole darn family, Oscar Wright, Larry Sanders, the Prophet of Soul. I would like to share in the city economic development strategy. The talent in Richmond are begging for opportunity to be heard, seen, applauded. Yes, you have in Richmond some superstars in the music field of soul, gospel, R&B, rap. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. Not million, but business. Big business, billion-dollar business. Just go to Nashville, Tennessee, and see how the music industry flourished in that city. I asked the city and the minority business quarter of the city, especially you, Mr. Joe James, and Mr. Gentry, and the city manager, as well as city council, to give the children of the city the opportunity. And if you do this, I'm not asking you nothing for myself, because I don't think I need none of y'all for nothing. God has blessed me. I can leave in tomorrow, go to Atlanta or L.A., and I'll be among my friends, such as Bill Cosby, Quincy Jones, and the Jackson family, and go to Bel Air and live with Bird Gordy, who I started with. But you will no longer be called the murder capital of the New South. You will be called the gospel, R&B, soul, and rap capital of the New South. I think I would rather have that title and that stigma than to be known as the murder capital of the South. Yes, the youth here can rap. Yes, Larry Bland can sing gospel, and Ernestine can sing jazz, and Johnny Houston that blows honky-tonk for Bill Doggett can still blow his horn. But without a studio to put it on wax and CD, you will never see a billion-dollar baby in this city. All I'm asking you to do, you got money for everybody else? Invest in your city, not in me. I've already have lost a ton, but I can go out there and get a ton more. Vice Mayor Comrade, and this honorable council, thank y'all for your insight with the crime initiative
and your fortitude and dedication to her and the citizens. I hope and pray that God will bless you, because you won't be seeing much of me, because I'm going to become a frequent flyer, and I'm going to make Richmond proud of me by putting this thing on the map and seeing your kids on BET and MTV. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and may God bless you, my beloved Vice Mayor. Peace be with all of y'all, and my God bless it, and hope I get a hit. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Vice Mayor, that concludes our list of speakers.
Do we have any people in the audience that have not signed up that wish to be heard?
Mr. Vice Mayor, members of council, Mr. Bob, my name is Ken Farino. I didn't sign up because I wanted to come down here and listen to what everybody said, and I think, as Mr. Bandasian said, they probably have said everything that I would say, but I would like to give you a little bit of insight into my experience with the city. I'm a practicing attorney. I probably have developed more real estate in the city historically than anyone else, over 300,000 square feet, over 100 apartments, and over 40 projects in Shockoe Bottom and Shockoe Slip. When Shockoe Slip started, I was the attorney that started the association, and I have dealt with every branch of the city and been confronted with every possible problem that you can have in a real estate development. My projects have gone from 900 square feet to over 100,000 square feet, and they've gone from industrial to apartments and commercial and office buildings. And I want to say that I'm not here to criticize the people that are in the city administration. I think that I have been able to work with those people in an amicable way. The problem is that there, as has been said here before, there are a set of rules and guidelines that they have to go by. And those rules and guidelines don't allow them the flexibility to deal with a city like we have. It would be similar to me taking in my 1985 car for a state inspection and somebody telling me that before I can take it out and drive it on the road, I have to put in an airbag because the new rules require airbags in all new cars. Well, when the 1994 building code comes in and I go in with my 1975 building, bam, I can't get in the next tenant because there are a lot of new rules that apply. I don't know whether any of you know this. If you want to put a sprinkler system in a building, you have to pay a $16,000 fee to the city. Well, that's okay if you got a $100,000 building, but it's not okay if you just have a 2,000 square foot building. The cost per square foot means you can't do it. And there are numerous things like that that I could go on about, but the bottom line on all that is if you want to correct those problems, you have to address it in such a way that the people in the city can help the people get through these problems in an expeditious manner. One illustration of this is I started a project about 16 months ago, applied for a building permit, and had a tenant that was going to pay the city $5,000 a month in sales taxes. I couldn't get my building permit because my building was on an alley, and there's a city rule which says if your building is on an alley, they won't issue you a permit. So I had to apply for a special use permit. After I applied for a special use permit, I had to apply for an easement to get the water line in. And after I got all of this and the easement from City Council saying I could do it, I went to the Department of Utilities to get my permit, and they would not issue it because they didn't like what City Council did. And I had to go through them and change everything, and finally 14 months later the tenant is ready to move in and the city's lost $5,000 a month in income. If I didn't know these people and work with them in what I thought was an expeditious manner, I mean, they were trying to help me, it probably would have never gotten done. So I think that all of this works together. Financing. nobody can get financing for any real estate project in the city. When I first started doing things in Shockoe Bottom, people told me I was crazy and that I should go somewhere else. I've probably done $10 million worth of private money in this city, and not one investor came from Richmond. Nobody in the city would invest in the city, and the local banks were reluctant to do it too. And
your time is up, Mr. Farina.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but
there are a lot of other things I can say.
send us your
but you
comments in writing, if you would.
Okay.
And I promise you we'll consider them. Can I see by way of hands other people that are interested in being heard tonight? Okay. Come on up.
My name is Lucille Burt. Mr. Vice Mayor, Mr. Conrad, Mr. Manager, Mr. Bob, and citizens and council members. Richmond City needs to take a look and create some jobs, and that would help to attract some of the people from various cities to come here maybe and do some business, especially when they are on vacation and visiting around. That would help attract them. One of the tremendous needs is for minority groups, especially the African American. We need to support. They need support that would be beneficial in this respect, and appreciated for your cooperation to help push and start the local business and small business economy. Because the minority groups, they have so much trouble trying to get loans to back them to start business. That's one of their letdowns. But I still commend all of the city councilmen for allowing the citizens, and especially me, to come to have this opportunity to express my opinion and my concerns. For your benefit, though, and the past support, I still thank you. And one other thing I'd like to inject right at the end. I wish some way that you would find to take a look at personal property tax for senior citizens, especially after they reach the age of 65 or over. Maybe it would be some way that you could abolish that tax, especially for homeowners with low income. I thank you, and good night.
Thank you, Ms. Barrett.
Good evening, members of the City Council, Vice Mayor, City Manager, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Omar Kenyatta. I'm a resident of the City of Richmond. I also, as previous speakers have indicated, applaud this effort in terms of allowing citizenry to have input in terms of policies as they are considered, both in areas of public safety as well as in economic development. My only concern is that many times the policies that we are considering would have such an impact on many of the neighborhoods, unfortunately, that the citizenry is not here or does not care for whatever reason to participate in the process. Therefore, I would hope at some point in time that we give some consideration in the same manner as the school board does, and that is meet periodically in the community or to host some type of townhouse session, thereby creating a more civic climate in many of our neighborhoods whereby they can have, the citizens there can have input. I'd just like to briefly make my comments in reference to, I believe, Objective 4 that reads, assist and promote small and minority business. Specifically in the area of minority business development, as you are aware of, there are two components. There is the actual professional as well as second or third generation of individuals who have been in business for some time. I'd like to speak very briefly to a program that was started with the development of the 6th Street Marketplace. This program specifically was designed to attract the first generation or the first-time business owner, specifically the minority business owner. I would hope in whatever plans of strategies that are being used, or looked at rather, that some focus will be given to these first-time business owners, some vendors, in terms of providing whatever technical support, entrepreneur training that will allow for the business development mindset to start being created in many segments of the community whereby individuals do not have the job options, whereby enterprise and entrepreneurship does in fact becomes the option. There are some psychologists that to promote this idea of achievement motivation. And achievement motivation actually implied that there has to be some idea of individuals being able to achieve. Personal micro-enterprise development is a critical part of allowing for family and individual business enterprise to take place in many communities with an infrastructure support system, with the city leading the way, of course, for business and industry becoming part of that partnership. I would hope that you'll give some thought and consideration to the idea of micro-business development, specifically in our hard-pressed and low-income neighborhoods. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kenyatta. That concludes our meeting, and I want to thank everybody that attended tonight and that spent their time and talent in coming forward and speaking on the subject of economic development. That concludes our meeting. Thank you.
Well, as we said when we came on the air, we weren't sure exactly how many people were going to talk and how many would be here and how long we'd be here as how long they talked. What happened was we had expected 65 on the list we were given. That became 66. Several did not show up. We finally ended up with a total of 58 speakers. They all had a 3-minute limit. Some did exceed it, some were under it. And we are now here at about, 10 minutes before the hour of 11 o'clock. So we've had just about 4 hours of people speaking their mind on what economic development means to them and how they would like to take part and how they like to have economic development include their particular organizations or their groups or their businesses. And rather a constructive one, basically. Most people are saying what they would like to see happen. People are volunteering to be a part of the group. And hopefully this is a beginning of something on the horizon for urban development, or economic development, and urban development too, let's face it, because it all kind of ties in together. So we'll be looking for see what happens with the economic development in the meetings that we have ahead. As we said when we first came on the air, there were 9 objectives. We won't go through all those right now. Just went through them at the very beginning of the program. So that's going to wrap it up. We'll be back to our regularly scheduled meetings now starting the second Monday in September. And until that time, I'm Dick Harmon. For Gavel to Gavel. Good night.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of my fellow members of City Council, I'd like to welcome you to this special meeting of the Richmond City Council. This council has conducted public hearings on crime and economic development, as well as a 3-day crime summit and a 2-day strategic planning session. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to present the plan of your city government for improving public safety. This represents the culmination of our meetings over the last 72 days. We realize that public safety is the top priority of our citizens. And so, tonight, the Honorable Leonidas Young, Mayor of the City of Richmond, and the Honorable David Hicks, the Commonwealth's Attorney, will present the plan of City Council, as well as the Commonwealth's Attorney, for improving public safety in Richmond. We are also honored tonight to receive His Excellency, the Honorable George Allen, Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, as well as the Honorable Charles Robb, United States Senator for the Commonwealth of Virginia, for the purpose of receiving their support. And so the Chair now recognizes Mayor Young for the purpose of introducing the Honorable George Allen. Mayor Young.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Council, Governor Allen, my fellow citizens, allow me in the offset to speak boldly and bluntly. Richmond is in crisis. A great evil has been loosed among us. The greatest sin of man, the taking of another life, has become commonplace in our great city. Seldom in our history have we known such a crisis. We are killing one another at a rate surpassed by no other city in the nation save one. We are gaining a national reputation that will haunt us for years to come. The next generation of Richmonders are at risk of having their prosperity and quality of life diminished far beyond recognition. Our economy, our neighborhoods, our schools, our streets, our very history and culture are being destroyed by this wave of violence. Tonight, with the actions we here are about to take, with the help of those who stand with us, we will defeat this evil, so help us God. Our business is vital and our time is short, so let us begin. At the outset of this crisis, I went to Governor George Allen and asked for the Commonwealth's help. He has given us his hand and has refused nothing that we have asked. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce to you the Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, George Allen.